Story number 1. In the fall of 2001, I, Alex Mitchell, a budding journalist, ventured into the unassuming suburb of Tower Heights. My mission? To gather material for a documentary on sky-high phantoms. Stories of crane operators seeing spectral apparitions amidst the skeletal frames of buildings in progress had flooded tabloids. Armed with a camera and a pulsating heart full of curiosity, I plunged into the enigma. The Crane brothers, Jake and Sam, were my first contacts. Both in their late 20s, they had been working the cranes since their late teens. On a chilly October evening, Jake met me at a local diner, his blue eyes darting nervously. "You ever been hundreds of feet up in the air, Alex? It's lonely, windy, and eerie." The day's work would be normal until twilight hit. Then, we'd see figures. Ghostly silhouettes wandering on the beams, swaying in the wind. At first, I thought they were illusions, tricks of the light, or fatigue. But Sam saw them too. They were real, and they had a story. I met Sam at their shared apartment. The walls bore relics of their ancestors, old photos, and newspaper clippings. He pulled out an article from 1979. The headline screamed, "Massive fire at Tower Heights construction site, 5 dead." The victims were youngsters, all below 30, working part-time to fund their dreams. 2 were college students, a young musician, a poet, and a dancer named Emily. "Emily's story chills my spine the most," Sam whispered. Emily, an aspiring ballet dancer, was known for practicing her routines atop the beams. The grace of her moves contrasted with the rough, iron skeleton of the building. She had a lover, a worker named Michael. But she also caught the fancy of David, a man known for his interest in dark arts and devil worship. One fateful evening, when Michael proposed to Emily on the beams, David saw them. Enraged, he performed an occult ritual and summoned a spirit to possess Michael. That night, under the malevolent spirit's influence, Michael sabotaged the site, leading to the fire. All 5 of them, including Emily, perished. The Crane brothers believe these 5 souls still roam the beams, with Emily dancing her eternal dance, while Michael, ridden with guilt, watches her from a distance. As a skeptic, I decided to spend a night atop a crane to witness these sky-high phantoms myself. Sarah, my assistant, and Mark, a tech-savvy friend, accompanied me. We set up cameras, infrared devices, and EMF detectors. The night was still until the clock neared midnight. A cold gust swept by, and then it began. The EMF detector went haywire. Sarah, scanning the area with her infrared camera, let out a scream. The screen displayed 5 figures, walking and dancing, their ethereal forms glowing against the dark backdrop. Suddenly, a loud, distorted whisper echoed, "Leave, this is our eternal stage." Mark, panicked, started an incantation he knew would act as an exorcism chant. As he recited it, a ghostly wind surrounded us, and I could swear I saw Emily's distraught face, contorted in pain. In the chaos, Mark lost his balance and fell, his scream piercing the silence. He died on impact. The next day, the Crane brothers confirmed a similar tragedy years ago. A priest, trying to exorcise the spirits, met the same fate as Mark. I left Tower Heights with a heavy heart, realizing some stories are best left untold. The spectral dancers of Tower Heights were a tragic reminder of love, jealousy, and the thin line between our world and the next. The phantoms of the past still lingered, echoing their grief and longing for eternity. Story number 2. In 2002, when I, Riley Thompson, was chasing ghost stories as a part of my documentary series, one particular story stood out. Tower Heights, an otherwise nondescript suburb, was the talk of paranormal forums. My interest was piqued by the crane that cried. Local resident, Laura, a barista in her mid-20s, was my introduction. It began about a year ago. Every night, especially during new moons. If you're close to that crane, you'll hear cries. Distinct, haunting cries. She whispered, looking genuinely scared. Daniel, a mechanic and a paranormal enthusiast, had more to share. The crane's tragic history dates back to its construction. They say one of the workers, a young guy named Leo, met with a fatal accident. But here's the twist: Leo was involved in devil worship. Rumor has it, before dying, he cursed the crane. Eliza, a local librarian, unveiled more layers. Leo was in love with Sophie, a beautiful young lady. But Sophie's heart belonged to another, a young architect named Aaron. Driven by jealousy and deep into occult practices, Leo attempted a ritual to bind Sophie to him forever. But as with many rituals, something went awry. Determined to witness this phenomenon myself, I teamed up with Chris, a sound engineer, and Maya, a medium, hoping her skills could provide some insights. We camped near the crane on a moonless night. Hours into the vigil, it began. An eerie cry, echoing across the vast expanse. The sound equipment picked up every nuance of that tormented scream. Suddenly, Maya went rigid. I sense him. Leo's restless spirit. And there's another. Sophie. She's trapped, bound by the ritual Leo attempted. Curious, we ventured closer to the crane's base, where Maya began an impromptu seance. As she communicated, she relayed their tragic tale. Leo's botched ritual had indeed bound Sophie, but not to him. Instead, it anchored her spirit to the crane, forever tormented by the sounds of its metallic cries. Feeling a mix of anger and sorrow, Maya suggested performing an exorcism to free Sophie. But the attempt took a toll. Maya's face contorted in pain, and she screamed in Leo's voice, "She's mine." Chris and I watched in horror as Maya, possessed by Leo's spirit, climbed the crane. As she neared the top, another figure materialized, Sophie's spirit. A heart-wrenching cry pierced the air, ending in a deafening silence. The next morning, the crane stood silent, and Maya was found unconscious at its base, miraculously alive but with no memory of the night's events. We left Tower Heights with more questions than answers. But one thing was certain: the crane that cried had witnessed love, jealousy, and the dark depths one could plunge into because of it. The echoes of the past reverberated with chilling tales of horror and sorrow. Story number 3. The year 2003 led me, Clara Jensen, to Tower Heights. Already gaining infamy for its hauntings, my new topic was whispers in the wind. It was these very whispers that operators claimed saved them from impending doom. A fresh graduate named Lucas first shared his experience. He had been working a late shift, maneuvering a crane when a whisper, clear as day, warned, "Stop now." Heeding the advice, he halted, only to witness a massive steel beam swing right where the crane's arm would have been. Another operator, Zoe, a young woman with fiery red hair, recounted, "The voice, it's almost motherly. Once it told me to double-check the hooks. Turned out, they were loose and would have caused a catastrophic accident." These tales intrigued me. Were these whispers guardian angels or something more sinister? Delving deeper, I discovered a tragic event from the 70s. A school trip to the construction site had ended in disaster when a sudden gust of wind caused the structure to collapse. Among the deceased was a teacher named Miss Evelyn, known for her dedication and care towards her students. Local historian, Jamie, gave me the missing piece. Miss Evelyn, before becoming a teacher, had lost her child due to a construction accident. They say she joined the school to fill the void of her lost child. She loved and protected every student as her own. With this knowledge, I decided to spend a night in the operator's cabin with 2 colleagues, Ian, a tech guy, and Lena, an experienced psychic. As the night deepened, Lena began to feel a presence. She described it as a warm, nurturing aura. However, as the clock struck midnight, another presence made itself known. The temperature dropped. Lena's expression changed from serene to horrified. There's another spirit here, filled with rage. It's him, the one responsible for the accidents. Ian's gadgets picked up EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, and we distinctly heard Miss Evelyn's voice, "Stay away from the edge," followed by a malicious laugh. Lena, channeling her psychic energy, tried to communicate. She learned that the malevolent spirit was of a worker named Peter, a disgruntled employee who'd been responsible for the accident in the 70s. He had dabbled in devil worship, intending to cause chaos. While Miss Evelyn tried to protect, Peter aimed to destroy. Feeling the tension rise, Lena began an exorcism. The cabin shook, lights flickered, and both spirits manifested, Miss Evelyn, her form radiant, and Peter, dark and menacing. As Lena chanted, Ian and I held on, witnessing a battle between light and dark. With a final scream from Peter and a calming whisper from Miss Evelyn, the cabin grew silent. The next day, operators reported an unusual calm. The whispers persisted but were free from the sinister undertones. As I drove away from Tower Heights, I marveled at the duality of the unseen world. Miss Evelyn's spirit, bound by love and duty, continued to guard, reminding us that even in places echoing with horror, there existed tales of hope and redemption. Story number 4. In the winter of 2004, I, Nathan Turner, was drawn to Tower Heights by tales of the suspended specter. As an avid documentarian, the blend of technology and the supernatural was too irresistible. Eric, a young crane operator with an analytical mind, relayed his bizarre experience. It was a routine lift. But, when I looked at the crane's camera system, I saw her. A ghostly woman suspended midair by the crane's hook. She wasn't there in reality, only on the screen. Curious, I teamed up with Mia, a software engineer, to analyze the camera system, and Grace, a parapsychologist, hoping to get a psychic read on the situation. A local bartender, Jake, provided some background. 20 years ago, a woman named Amelia fell to her death from one of those buildings. Some say it wasn't an accident, that devil worship was involved. Determined to get to the bottom of this, we set up our equipment on a particularly cold night. Hours passed, with only the shivering wind as our company. But then, it happened. The crane's camera showed the spectral figure of Amelia, eerily floating, her face a mask of anguish. Grace attempted to connect with Amelia. Through hushed whispers, she learned of Amelia's torment. She was tricked into a dark ritual by a man she trusted, Richard, a co-worker. The ritual went wrong, and she's been trapped since, her spirit bound to the very heights she fell from. As we delved deeper, Mia discovered a corrupted file in the crane system. "It's coded," she remarked, puzzled. "Like it's hiding something." Hours of decoding revealed a shocking video of Richard performing the ritual, the chants echoing with malicious intent. As Amelia's screams filled the night, Grace surmised that the video was the tether holding Amelia's spirit captive. Knowing they had to act, Mia and Grace devised a plan to free Amelia using a combination of technology and exorcism. As Mia tried to delete the cursed file, Grace began her chants, her voice rising to combat Richard's echoes from the past. Suddenly, a gust of wind knocked down our equipment. Out of the chaos, Richard's apparition materialized, menacing and dark, his voice a demonic growl, "She's mine." A battle of wills ensued. Grace, drawing upon all her spiritual strength, cried out, "Amelia, break free. You don't belong to him." Amidst the tumult, the crane system sparked to life, lifting the spectral Amelia higher and higher until, with one final scream from Richard, she vanished, the system's screen showing a peaceful sky. The next day, Eric reported the crane working perfectly, free from ghostly interferences. As I left Tower Heights, the haunting image of the suspended specter stayed with me, a grim reminder of the lengths one could go to for power and control. But also, a testament to the strength of the human spirit, even in death, and the power of redemption. Story number 5. 2005 found me, Adrian Blair, on a mission to unravel the enigma of Site 13 in Tower Heights. As a budding paranormal journalist, tales of malfunctioning cranes and eerie shadows called to me like a moth to a flame. My first contact, Damien, a crane operator with tattoos of protection symbols, relayed, "It's not just the machinery malfunctioning. The very shadows move, unnaturally. Like they're alive." Another worker, Elise, a skeptical engineer, remarked, "I've seen shadows move against the direction of light. It defies physics." I teamed up with Kyle, a specialist in light anomalies, and Tessa, an occult researcher. Local lore offered insight. In the 60s, Site 13 was the gathering point for a cult practicing forbidden shadow magic, aiming to blend the living world with the shadow realm. Their leader, Vincent, was said to have vanished into the shadows, leaving a legacy of cursed land. Our first night at Site 13 was laden with anticipation. As darkness cloaked the site, shadows began to dance. Kyle's equipment picked up erratic light behaviors, with shadows moving contrary to the light source. In a chilling moment, Tessa pointed to a crane. We saw it, the silhouette of a man, distinct yet featureless, moving along the crane, defying gravity. Drawing from her research, Tessa intoned, "It's Vincent. Bound to the very shadows he sought to control." Realizing we were onto something profound, we decided to confront this entity. We formed a circle, each holding a lantern. The plan was to use light to trap and dispel the shadowy figure. As Tessa began her incantation, shadows coalesced, forming the dark figure of Vincent. With a voice like rustling leaves, he taunted, "You cannot banish what you do not understand." The shadows lunged. In that split second, I remembered a chant from an old journal I had read. Desperate, I began reciting it, urging the others to join in. With our voices rising in unison, light from our lanterns intensified. Vincent writhed, trapped between our circle of light. His scream echoed as he disintegrated, shadows returning to their natural state. The cranes, as if waking from a trance, whirred back to life. Morning found Site 13 transformed. Workers reported no malfunctions, and the unnerving shadow play was no more. Driving away from Tower Heights, the weight of the night's events weighed heavily on me. I had seen firsthand the cost of tampering with forces beyond comprehension. Yet, the resilience of the human spirit, armed with knowledge and unity, was a beacon against even the darkest of shadows. Story number 6. In 2006, a bizarre incident drew me, Jordan Mitchell, to Tower Heights. A local newspaper had an odd headline, "Crane Operator Lost in Time?" Intrigued, I decided to uncover the mystery of the towering time loop. Liam, the crane operator in question, was a 25-year-old with an ordinary life. But one fateful day in April changed everything. I ascended the crane, as usual, he began, eyes distant. But at the top, I was no longer in 2006. The landscape was different. Wooden houses, dirt roads. I saw the city evolve, buildings rising and falling, fires, wars, parades. All in a matter of minutes. I gathered a team, Brooke, a historian, Max, a physicist, and Rhea, a spiritual medium. Brooke's research unveiled a troubling past. Centuries ago, this land belonged to an ancient civilization, known for worshipping the deity of time. They believed in the cyclical nature of existence, of life, death, and rebirth. Max theorized about wormholes, time dilation, and the power of gravitational fields. The crane's height, combined with some unknown factors, might have opened a portal. As for Rhea, she connected with the spirits of the land. A ritual was performed here. They tried to harness the power of time but failed. Their leader, a high priestess named Sarah, paid the price with her life. The common thread? The cyclical nature of time and a wronged spirit. One evening, with the crane as our backdrop, Rhea began her seance, attempting to contact Sarah. the atmosphere grew dense. Suddenly, a gust of wind swirled around us, and we found ourselves in a different era. There stood Sarah, regal and commanding. "You intrude upon sacred ground," she warned. Rhea stepped forward. "Sarah, we wish to free you, to break this loop." Sarah looked weary. "My people tried to control time. In our arrogance, we disrupted the natural flow. I remain as the guardian, ensuring the loop isn't broken, lest chaos ensues." The realization was profound. Liam's experience was a mere glimpse of the time loop Sarah was eternally trapped in. Brooke, drawing upon her knowledge, suggested a ritual to appease the deity of time, seeking forgiveness. With Sarah guiding, we combined our strengths. Max's scientific equipment, Brooke's historical artifacts, and Rhea's spiritual energy became one. The ritual was intense. The very fabric of time seemed to vibrate. With our combined plea, there was a blinding flash. The next moment, we were back in 2006. Tower Heights seemed unchanged, but a calmness permeated the air. Liam never experienced the time loop again. Driving away from that enigmatic suburb, I was humbled. Our existence is a mere speck in the vast river of time. In trying to harness it, we risk being swept away. But with respect and understanding, we can find our place in its flow. Story number 7. By the summer of 2007, my reputation as an investigator of the unexplained had gained some traction, leading me, Clara Martinez, to the eerily silent construction zones of Tower Heights. There, I delved into the phenomenon of ghostly conversations echoing through the cranes. Mason, a crane operator with barely a year's experience, was the first to share his encounter. "Every time I climb into the cabin, I hear these distant conversations. They're faint but clear. They talk about tools, weather, sometimes just casual banter. But it's always voices I don't recognize." Sophie, a young architect, added, "I thought it was some kind of interference. But then one day, I heard my grandfather's voice. He worked here decades ago and died in a tragic accident. Their stories led me to gather a crew: Alex, a tech-savvy audio analyst, Isabel, a medium with an uncanny sensitivity to spirits, and Ben, a historian who grew up hearing legends of Tower Heights. Ben shared chilling tales of accidents and mysterious deaths spanning a century, making the site infamous. Many workers lost their lives. Most just vanished, leaving behind only their voices. Isabel conducted a session trying to connect with these spirits. Suddenly, the air grew cold, and the crane's radio crackled to life. "Jerry? Hand me the wrench," a voice echoed, followed by another, "Watch out. The cable's snapping." The realization was heavy. These were the last moments, the final conversations of workers who'd met untimely ends. Determined to bring peace, we decided on a twofold approach. Alex would capture and analyze the voices, attempting to identify them, while Isabel would perform a ritual to guide these lost souls. In the dead of night, with the towering crane above, Alex set up his equipment, capturing hours of ghostly chatter. And as dawn approached, with a list of names from past accidents, Isabel began her ritual. "Robert, Jerry, Samuel," she called out, her voice unwavering, "we hear you. It's time to find rest." I felt it, a gust of wind, a sigh of relief, as the spirits, one by one, acknowledged and departed. The following days saw a change. The cranes of Tower Heights operated without any ghostly interruptions. Mason, with newfound confidence, said, "It's peaceful now, no more echoes." Driving away from Tower Heights, the weight of history on my shoulders, I marveled at the resilience of the human spirit. Even in death, there's an innate desire to connect, to be heard. In listening, we not only honor their memories but free them from their eternal loops of tragedy. Story number 8. In the sultry summer of 2008, Daniel Graves, a paranormal investigator, was lured to the bustling construction hub of Tower Heights. rumors of a banshee haunting a crane were circling the local community. Every time her wail echoed, the crane seemed to sway dangerously, leading to numerous near accidents. My first night on the site, I met Ellie, a fiery, red-haired crane operator. "I've heard it," she whispered, her usually bold voice shaking. "A piercing wail. It's as if the wind carries it directly to my ears, and then the crane starts to lose its balance." Jake, a construction worker with a chiseled jaw and tattoos, corroborated her account. "Last week, after that scream, a beam almost crushed me. That thing's warning us, or worse, cursing us." My team consisted of Leo, a tech expert for surveillance, Rosa, a talented psychic, and Lucy, a young journalist documenting the bizarre happenings for her column. Lucy uncovered a chilling backstory. In the 1960s, a young woman named Moira was rumored to be involved in devil worship. She was ostracized, accused of cursing the site, and was found dead right where the crane stands today. Locals say she's our banshee. With Leo's equipment in place, we watched the site. Hours turned to days with no sighting, but then, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. The camera showed the crane wobbling. Rosa, her face pale, whispered, "She's here." Guided by Rosa, we approached the crane's base. There, a spectral figure with flowing hair stood, her eyes hollow, her face sorrowful. Rosa began to communicate, while Leo and Lucy documented. Moira's spirit revealed her side of the story. "I love the worker here." But rumors, accusations of witchcraft, they separated us. I was heartbroken, not a witch. My death wasn't an escape, it was a tragedy. Ellie's voice trembled. The crane's imbalance, it's her grief. Her unresolved pain. Rosa, with her psychic abilities, tried to help Moira find closure. "Your love, your story, we acknowledge it. You can find peace." As dawn broke, a calmness settled. Moira's banshee form transformed, showing a beautiful young woman, smiling, fading away. Driving away from Tower Heights, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. Every ghost has a story, and every wail, a tale of despair. Sometimes, all they need is for someone to listen, to understand, and to set them free. Story number 9. In 2009, I, Simon Harper, was a novice journalist eager for an exciting scoop. I stumbled upon whispers of the cursed ladder at Tower Heights. They said, climbing the crane's access ladder didn't just take you up, it took you somewhere far more sinister. I couldn't resist. On my first day there, I met Mia, a svelte engineer with raven black hair, and her buddy Ryan, a brawny fellow with a nervous tic. "People see things," Ryan muttered. "Hellish visions. Workers drenched in blood. Beams that look like monstrous creatures. The sight, but darker, eviler." Mia interjected, "3 people have had to be hospitalized. They climbed up and when they came down, they were changed." I teamed up with Clara, an occult expert, and Ethan, a cameraman. We decided to scale the ladder at night when the hallucinations were reported to be the strongest. Clara performed a small ritual before our ascent, whispering chants and sprinkling a protective herb. "There's a dark energy here. We should be cautious," she murmured. As we climbed higher, the atmosphere grew colder, oppressive. At the top, my vision blurred and refocused, revealing a grotesque panorama, a nightmarish version of the construction site. Fires blazed, shadows loomed, and guttural screams echoed. Ethan whispered, his voice trembling, "I see my brother. But he died years ago." He tried to reach out, but Clara yanked him back. "It's not him. It's a trap." As the horror unfolded, a figure stood apart, a woman draped in torn clothes, eyes void of emotion. Mia's voice broke through the walkie-talkie, "That's Lydia. She practiced dark arts and was rumored to have sacrificed herself to the devil for immense power. They say her spirit curses this ladder." Clara began chanting, attempting to break the curse. The temperature dropped further. Ice formed on the metal around us. The demonic vision intensified. Tortured souls reached out, beckoning us to join them. Ethan, almost entranced, was about to step off the platform when Clara's amulet glowed brightly, repelling the dark forces. Suddenly, we were back on the regular crane platform, the dawn sunlight breaking the horizon. It felt as if we had been up there for seconds, yet the entire night had passed. Clara was drained. The curse isn't broken, only repelled for now. The ladder remains a gateway. The barrier between our world and Lydia's hellish realm is thin here. Driving away from Tower Heights, I felt the weight of what I had witnessed. That ladder, that cursed portal, was a testament to the eternal battle between good and evil, a liminal space where dark tales of the past intersected with the present. And while we had lived to tell the tale, the haunting question remained: how many others wouldn't? Story number 10. In the early months of 2010, I, Jared Calloway, began my stint as a night watchman at Tower Heights. Fresh out of college and desperately in need of employment, I thought the job was straightforward. Patrol, keep an eye on things, and occasionally shoo away some teenagers. Week 1 was uneventful. By week 2, the unease started setting in. One night, as I patrolled, I noticed figures moving atop the crane. Faint and translucent, these ghostly workers operated with an eerie precision. They hauled phantasmal beams and riveted spectral girders, repeating the tasks endlessly. Their faces twisted in sorrow and pain. Curiosity turned to obsession. I started documenting these specters. I roped in Lila, an amateur paranormal investigator, and her techie friend, Zach. Lila was intrigued. There's a reason spirits linger. We need to find it. On a foggy Thursday, Zach set up a camera and recorded the phantom workers. When played back, amongst the cacophony, we heard a whisper: "Finish the tower. Set us free." Research led us to historian Ava. Tower Heights was initially called Hallow Heights, she began. Back in the 1800s, the construction site saw mass death. Workers, lured by a devil-worshipping foreman, were sacrificed. The tower was intended to be a monument for dark forces. A plan formed. We had to complete the spectral tower. Armed with tools and a blueprint that Lila claimed she received in a dream, we began our paranormal construction project. As we riveted and bolted, the ghostly workers joined in, their sorrow turning to gratitude. However, every story has a villain. The devil-worshipping foreman materialized. A tall, shadowy figure, his eyes hollow. "You can't break the pact," he roared. Terrified, I looked to Lila, who began an impromptu exorcism. Holding a crucifix, she shouted incantations. The foreman resisted, his malevolent energy causing tremors. As the spectral crane tower neared completion, the ghost workers rallied, circling the foreman, their combined energy pushing against his. A blinding light engulfed the scene. When it subsided, both the phantom workers and the foreman were gone. Lila whispered, her voice heavy with exhaustion, "They're free." The following nights were silent. The restless spirits had found their peace. The Tower Heights no longer echoed with their despair. I continued my work, not as a mere watchman, but as a guardian, ensuring no one would ever exploit those hallowed grounds again. Story number 11. The year I'd never forget. I was a fresh graduate, landing a job as an engineer on a construction project in Tower Heights. I had heard tales about the place, but like any scientific mind, I dismissed them. Until the incident with the swinging poltergeist. The day started as any other. Cold breeze, clear skies, and the construction site buzzing with energy. Rachel, my colleague, and I were overseeing the hoisting of materials. That's when it happened. The chains started shaking, the tools and steel beams suspended midair swayed violently, dancing to an invisible tune. Workers panicked, and chaos ensued. What's causing this?" Rachel shouted over the clamor. "It's not the wind, it's not mechanical failure. Something's manipulating it," I replied, stunned. Marcus, a local, beckoned us. "It's the swinging poltergeist of Tower Heights," he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. Rachel and I, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, decided to investigate. We reached out to Emma, a journalist who had documented the unexplained phenomena in Tower Heights. Emma led us to an old newspaper archive. In the 1900s, a construction worker named Samuel died tragically at this very site. A heavy beam, hoisted by a crane, crushed him. Some say it was sabotage. Others claim it was an accident. But ever since, any material suspended in the air swings violently, as if controlled by Samuel's restless spirit. With Emma's information, we approached Luke, a renowned psychic, hoping he could communicate with the spirit. That night, as the moon cast an eerie glow over Tower Heights, Luke began his seance. The air turned cold. The tools began their erratic dance again. "Samuel?" Luke called out. "Why do you cause this chaos?" A gust of wind brought a chilling whisper, "Betrayed. Revenge." "We mean you no harm," Luke continued. "Tell us who wronged you. Let us help." The wind carried fragmented memories. Glimpses of a coworker's jealousy, a rigged crane, and the fatal moment of betrayal. Luke's face turned white. It wasn't an accident. He was murdered. Days turned into weeks as we dug deeper, uncovering the dark truth. The descendant of Samuel's betrayer was still in town, carrying the guilt of his ancestor. Fearing exposure, he tried to stop our investigation. But one night, as I was walking home, I felt a presence. It was Samuel, pointing me toward the betrayer's home. Inside, we found a diary confessing to the ancient crime, passed down through generations. The truth out, the tools at Tower Heights ceased their ghostly dance. Samuel's spirit, avenged and acknowledged, finally found peace. Years later, as I drive past Tower Heights, I remember that fateful year. And I pay silent tribute to Samuel, the spirit who just wanted his story told. Story number 12. It was the year my friends and I, full of youthful curiosity and ignorance, decided to venture into urban exploration. We had a YouTube channel, Urban Ghost Hunters, where we'd document our escapades into the abandoned, the forgotten, the haunted. But of all the places we visited, the abandoned construction site at Tower Heights, with its derelict crane, left an indelible mark on us. There were 4 of us, myself, Jake, Lisa, and Aaron. We had been tipped off about the abandoned cranes of Tower Heights by an old-timer named Doug. Doug mentioned that not only were the cranes abandoned, but they also came with a dark history. We were instantly sold on the idea. As we approached the site one foggy evening, the skeletal silhouette of the crane towered above us. Lisa, always the brave one, decided to climb the control cabin, while Aaron set up his camera equipment. Jake and I were scouting the perimeter. Inside the cabin, Lisa stumbled across a logbook. The entries were routine, but the last one, dated in 1988, sent shivers down our spines. "He's here again. Watching from the shadows. I can't take it anymore." Just as Lisa relayed this to us, Aaron's camera picked up a strange anomaly, a shadowy figure ascending the crane. Jake, usually the skeptic, was the first to admit that it wasn't any of us. It wasn't long before we heard the whispers, soft murmurs floating on the wind, echoing the sounds of construction, metal clanging, and workers shouting. But it all felt wrong. Curiosity piqued. We contacted a local historian named Ms. Clara. She informed us about a crane operator named Theo who, back in the 80s, claimed to be haunted by an apparition at the site. Despite no one believing him, his increasing paranoia led to an untimely death, labeled as an accident. With this knowledge, we returned to the site, this time accompanied by a medium named Elsie. As she chanted, a gust of wind suddenly enveloped the site. The crane groaned as if alive. Elsie's voice trembled. Theo is trapped here, bound by the spirit that tormented him. The atmosphere grew dense, and a chilling voice echoed, "Leave and never return." We didn't need further prompting. As we fled, our equipment captured the crane's hook swinging menacingly, barely missing Jake. Driving away, the weight of our experience settled in. We uploaded our footage, which became an instant sensation. But we also faced backlash from devil worshippers, who claimed Tower Heights as a sacred site for their rituals. We decided to distance ourselves from urban exploration after that, realizing some places, and their stories, are best left untouched. Even today, as I pass by Tower Heights, the sight of that abandoned crane sends chills down my spine, and I can't help but recall that eerie evening when the past came alive. Story number 13. The year began on a normal note, but little did I know that it would turn into one of the most spine-chilling periods of my life. I was an engineering graduate named Alex, fresh out of college and eager to apply my skills in the real world. My first job was at Tower Heights, a rapidly developing suburb. My role was to monitor and ensure the smooth operation of the massive cranes that dotted the skyline. One evening, while checking the communication systems, I stumbled across an old crane, rusted and apparently untouched for years. Curiosity got the better of me, and I climbed into the operator's cabin. To my astonishment, the radio crackled to life. A voice, laden with sorrow and regret, echoed, "It wasn't supposed to end like this." I froze. The voice sounded eerily familiar. It was the voice of Tom, my late uncle, who had been a crane operator at Tower Heights. A sudden mishap years ago had sent him plummeting to his untimely demise. I had heard stories from my colleagues, like Sarah, a technician, and Robert, a site manager, about ghostly happenings in the area. Tales of exorcism deaths, frightening apparitions, devil worship, they seemed like fabrications to scare the newbies. But now, with my uncle's voice resonating in my ears, doubts crept in. I reached out to my friend Emily, a budding journalist, hoping to delve deeper into this mystery. Armed with a recorder, she accompanied me to the crane the next night. Sure enough, at the stroke of midnight, the radio buzzed with Tom's voice, "Beware the shadows, they're watching." Emily and I unearthed a series of gruesome events that took place on this site. Tower Heights wasn't just a hub for construction, it had been the epicenter for a series of unexplained deaths, paranormal occurrences, and, as per local legends, secret gatherings of devil worshippers. These incidents became the foundation for the infamous Creepypasta stories that circulated online. With each visit, the messages from Tom grew more frantic and desperate. Emily, with her connections, brought in a medium named Eliza to communicate with Tom's spirit. The seance was held within the cabin of the crane, and what followed was a nightmarish series of events. The crane jerked into life, swaying menacingly, with ghostly apparitions manifesting around us. Eliza chanted in a deep voice, attempting to free Tom's trapped spirit. But she was met with resistance from malevolent forces that sought to keep him chained. A climactic battle of energies ensued, culminating in a blinding flash of light. The next morning, the crane lay silent. No voices, no ghostly apparitions. Tom's spirit was finally at peace. We left Tower Heights soon after, with memories of that eerie crane forever etched in our minds. Even today, as I drive past Tower Heights, I can't shake off the chilling memories of that haunted crane, my late uncle's warnings, and the sinister secrets that the suburb held. Story number 14. I can't forget that year, not even if I tried. I was working as a city planner in one of the fast-developing suburbs of the U.S., Tower Heights. It was known for its impressive skyscrapers and modern infrastructure. However, behind the glitter and glamour, there lay a dark history, which I'd soon discover. I had been assigned to work on a new project, and in my enthusiasm, I often stayed back late. One evening, as I was wrapping up my work, My colleague Lily, an architect, approached me. Her pale face and hesitant demeanor suggested she had something crucial to share. "Have you heard the Tower Heights legends?" she whispered, eyes darting around as if worried we were being overheard. I frowned. "You mean the urban legends and creepy stories kids share on internet forums?" Lily nodded. "Those stories are based on real events, and the epicenter of all these tales is the old building site on Elm Street." Intrigued, I, along with Lily and a few other adventurous colleagues, Jake, a construction worker, and Mia, a safety officer, decided to visit the site after hours. Armed with flashlights, we treaded cautiously, the silence around us only broken by our footsteps. It wasn't long before Mia stumbled upon old construction logs dating back to decades ago. The logs had a series of names with one thing in common: all had died under mysterious circumstances at Tower Heights. As we delved deeper, we found an old journal buried amidst rubble. The author, from what we could deduce, had been involved in devil worship and had performed numerous rituals at Tower Heights, hoping to attain immortality. Suddenly, an icy wind blew, extinguishing our flashlights. The darkness was impenetrable, and a sense of dread settled upon us. Ghostly whispers echoed around, recounting tales of exorcism deaths, frightening apparitions, and malevolent spirits. Panicking, Jake suggested we leave immediately. But as we turned to leave, a spectral figure blocked our path. It was a young man, no older than 25, with hollow eyes and an anguished expression. Recognizing him from the logs, Lily gasped, "That's Daniel, the devil worshipper." To our horror, more apparitions began to manifest, each recounting their tragic tales of being ensnared by Daniel's rituals. With courage I didn't know I possessed, I stepped forward. "We're here to help. Tell us what you want." The spirits murmured, their voices overlapping, but the message was clear: they sought release. They guided us to an altar, where ritualistic symbols were inscribed. With Mia's knowledge of ancient languages, we began chanting a spell, hoping to free the tormented souls. Hours seemed to pass before a brilliant light illuminated the site. When it faded, the spirits were gone, leaving behind a sense of peace. The next day, the building site on Elm Street was declared a memorial site, a silent testimony to the unspeakable horrors that had taken place. Today, as I look back at that night, I shudder to think what could have been. But one thing is for certain: the tales from Tower Heights were all too real, and I was a part of their chilling legacy. Story number 15. 2015, Tower Heights, a name that still sends shivers down my spine. I was a young journalist at the time, hungry for stories that could give me my big break. So, when rumors about Tower Heights reached my ears, I decided to investigate. They said that the area was haunted, and that numerous strange phenomena had been reported there. I thought it was a story worth exploring. As I was driving around the suburb, I picked up my college friend, Evan, a professional photographer. Alongside him was Rachel, a historian, and Liam, a local contractor. They had been studying the area's strange past and had their own tales to tell. Together, we formed a team of sorts, each of us eager to get to the bottom of the Tower Heights mystery. Our first stop was an old mansion rumored to be the epicenter of the paranormal activity. As we approached, I felt a chill in the air, though the weather was warm. An eerie silence engulfed the place, making even the bravest of us feel uneasy. Rachel began recounting stories passed down from older generations, tales of devil worship and spirits trapped between realms. She mentioned an occultist named Gregory who had lived in the mansion and had supposedly performed dark rituals there. While we explored the mansion's dilapidated rooms, Liam found an old blueprint of the building. To our shock, it showed hidden rooms and tunnels that were not visible to the naked eye. Our curiosity piqued. We decided to explore these hidden chambers. As we delved deeper into the mansion, we began to hear whispering voices and footsteps that seemed to come from nowhere. In one chamber, we discovered an altar adorned with symbols and old photographs. the most unsettling part was a fresh photo of our group, taken just hours ago. Panic began to rise, but Rachel's knowledge helped us decipher a counter-ritual from the symbols. Suddenly, the mansion was filled with apparitions, each one recounting tales of gruesome deaths, possessions, and unexplained events linked to Gregory's rituals. We realized that these spirits were trapped, yearning for release. Drawing upon our collective strengths, we began performing the counter-ritual. The atmosphere grew thick with tension as the spirits circled around us, their cries growing louder. Then, with a deafening roar, a blinding light filled the room. When the dust settled, we found ourselves outside the mansion, the spirits gone and the atmosphere lighter. That experience was a turning point in my life. I did get my big break, and the story of Tower Heights became one of the most read articles in my career. But more than fame, I gained an understanding of the thin line separating our world from the unknown. Whenever I pass by Tower Heights now, I shudder, reminded of the dark past that lurked there. But I also feel a sense of pride, knowing that my friends and I played a part in setting those trapped souls free.